The Indian Independence Act was passed in Parliament in UK on the 18th of July, 1947. Originally, India was to be granted independence in May 1948. The date was preponed to 15th August 47. So after the Indian Independence Act was passed on 18th July, you had 12 plus 17 days to complete the process of signing 562, if at all, instruments of accession. On 25th of July, 1947, the Chamber of Princes met. So, in the Chamber of Princes, Sardar Patel said, we will only have with us, that the Union, communications, external affairs, and defense. You are autonomous for the rest. 25th of July. 25th of July. That's also part of the record that I've given you. Mountbatten said it in the chamber on 5th of July. He had said it also. So, therefore, and that was the understanding with the princes. It will be a federal structure. Communications, foreign affairs, and defense will be the Union, and the states will be autonomous. That's one part. The other part was, there were some princely states, one of them, the only property it had was a well. He was a prince of that well, He had no means of livelihood. They naturally, such small states had to join larger princely states. Kathiawar, Saurashtra. Saurashtra had incorporated 220 princely states within it. The whole process of 17 days was an entirely asymmetric process. Idea was to persuade all of them to please sign instruments of accession. Epsu was one of them. Faridkot, Pesu, all those. That was happening, with Sardar Patel and VP Menon and Mountbatten, who had personal relations with all the princes, which neither Sardar Patel had nor VP Menon had. Because then the Governor General Mountbatten was actually served in India for a long period of time, and each of these princely states had a resident. And they would be told that you only should spend 10% of your revenue of the state on yourself, the rest you should spend on the public, but most of them spend 80% on themselves. But ultimately, they all acceded. They all signed instrument of accession by 15th of August. With a standstill agreement and nothing more. Some of them who merged into larger administrative units didn't have to do that, because then they were represented by the larger administrative units. So my learned friend, the solicitor, is right that many of them, princes, did not merge because they were merged with other larger administrative units. So it was an entirely asymmetric way of actually getting them all together in 17 days. It was a Herculean task. Ultimately, who stood out? Hyderabad, Junagadh, Kashmir, and Travancore. In fact, the first ruler to revolt was Travancore. Yeah, because of the advice of the Dewan Mullahs, who ultimately got attacked and was in hospital, and then they signed the instrument of accession. But that's just the Mullahs. I know that. I don't want to take it. And now you were left with Junagadh, you were left with Hyderabad and Kashmir. And as far as Kashmir was concerned, your lordship knows, the instrument of accession was signed subject to certain conditions. In many of the instruments of accession that were signed by other princes had a provision that there can be a supplementary instrument of accession, but there cannot be unless I give consent. That is, the ruler gave consent. So some of them had supplementary, but this didn't happen in Jammu and Kashmir. The point that I'm making is, Jammu and Kashmir was the only state in India where a special dispensation was made for reasons which were domestic and reasons that were international. Which is why this whole argument that there must be uniformity is completely bereft of the historical context. Now, principle was contiguity and population. Junagadh acceded to Pakistan. Acceded to Pakistan. Somnath temple was in Junagadh, very dear to all of us. So, Malads, having acceded to Pakistan, India wanted to invade and take over Junagadh. Mountbatten said, you can't do it. He has acceded to Pakistan. This is foreign territory for you. So ultimately, Malads, infiltrators were sent. And they took over and there was no resistance. Then negotiations took place and Pakistan agreed to a plebiscite, a referendum, knowing full well that such a referendum would happen in Kashmir also then. The same thing happened in Hyderabad. The ruler was Muslim. The people wanted to join India. But he did not join Pakistan. He wanted to be independent. He didn't accede to Pakistan. And there was a general this happens nowadays also. There was a freelancer who promised the ruler of Hyderabad that I will get you arms, you give me so much money. So they piled up a lot of arms to resist any invasion. Ultimately, that man, Mr. Cotton, left him and the invasion took place and be occupied. Now you're left with Jammu and Kashmir. Jammu and Kashmir, the population was Hindu, was Muslim majority, and the ruler was Dogra. It is in this historical context that you must view what happened in Jammu and Kashmir was only to ensure that Jammu and Kashmir becomes an integral part of India. There can be no question about it. I'll come to that. Yes, I'll come to that. There can be no plebiscite in Jammu and Kashmir. That is our position. We stand with India. Now, Manas, having signed the instrument of accession by 15th of August and some of them standstill agreements, the question then was they had to merge because none of them had any administrative units in place. You had to have local self-government, and your lordship knows at that point in time, we wanted India to be a democratic nation. So then Sardar Patel and Menon persuaded all of them to please have merger agreements so that we can treat you in the same way as other provinces. So all of them signed merger agreements, not Jammu and Kashmir. Nor was Jammu and Kashmir asked to sign a merger agreement. Never.
How many merger agreements were there actually?
I'll give you the number, Manoj. I think we have them. No, much less. Much less. I will give your lordship the number.
Because everybody who signed an instrument of accession didn't necessarily sign a merger, right?
No. Because what happened was, Manoj, many of them
had formed unions with existing states like Kathiawar or Saurashtra.
That's right.
Pepsu.
That's right. You'll have that. You'll have that. Manoj, that's not an issue. So, Manoj, that didn't happen in Jammu and Kashmir. So when the infiltrators came, and he couldn't defend himself, and he went away from Srinagar, he ran away from Srinagar. And we helped him, by going there. The issue arose, we had no communication systems in place. And we didn't know the topography. Our army, because we had never been there. The army represented that if you want to deal with the infiltrator, the source of it is Pakistan. So we'll have to target Pakistan, to which Mountbatten said that will declare war. If you do that, it will be war. You cannot be allowed to do that. So we were not allowed to do that. So the result was that in that situation, kindly remember, referendum is not the only place that we're talking about in Jammu and Kashmir. There should be no referendum. There can't be a referendum in any case. But referendum happened in the northwest provinces. We had the Congress government in the northwest frontier province. A referendum happened there and they went to Pakistan. Referendum happened in Junagadh. So it is not as if this was alien to the concept of how people express their wills. But in our case, what happened was the government of India said, let the Constituent Assembly, namely the people of Jammu and Kashmir, represented in the Constituent Assembly, express the will of the people. That's how 370 came in. There was no other way to express the will of the people, certainly not through a referendum. Nobody wanted it, especially after the first year, because in 1953, Sheikh Abdullah was arrested by Nehru because he raised the slogan that we want to be autonomous. Sheikh Abdullah was arrested by Nehru himself. Nobody wanted a referendum. Nobody would have allowed a referendum. But the way out was, in that context, draft a provision in 370 by which the will of the people of Jammu and Kashmir can be expressed through the Constituent Assembly. That's the historical lay of the land, Manoj, in the context of which you have to read Article 370 of the Constitution.